Hey everybody, Tekking101 here, and in today's video, we are going to be discussing the members of the Straw Hat crew that have honestly pulled the most weight throughout the story. The series would be nothing without them. The Going Merry and the Thousand Sunny, the ships of the Straw Hat Pirates. Not exactly characters, but they kind of are. In fact, I think there's a lot of people out there that are like, how dare you refer to them as ships? They were living, breathing piles of wood that cared about the crew just as much as any other member does. Okay, fine, whatever you want to call them. I feel like it would be weird for me to do discussion series about the Straw Hat Pirates and not bring up the ships that carried them from destinations. And also, considering that the whole premise of this series is traveling from island to island, the ships that are connected with the Straw Hat Pirates are, of course, very important, and they need their own, discussion video, I feel. This is not going to be a video going into, the blueprints and schematics of each ship, though those are actually out there. Oda is really in depth with this and did design the layout of both the Going Merry and the Thousand Sunny. I might touch upon that a little bit, but if you just want a general layout on how these ships are, just head over to the One Piece wiki and on the Thousand Sunny or the Going Merry page, and both of them will have a complete list of all the pictures that, detail how the ship is actually laid out and constructed. So that's pretty cool. Alright, so way back in olden times, at the beginning of the story, you only had three things. You had a boy, you had a straw hat, and you had a dream. That dream was to have a crew and a ship and gonna have the best damn adventure ever. And Luffy wasn't exactly great at planning on how he was gonna obtain these things. He just figured, I'm just gonna shuffle off from Fuchsia Village and everything will click together. I'll just find everything I need along the way. And it actually worked out pretty good like that, but, I think everybody else would just, drown in the water. So he leaves Fuchsia Village in just this tiny little dinghy that immediately gets sucked in by a whirlpool, so he has to, hop in the barrel. Then he ends up in Alvida's ship, and he's bouncing around. Him and Zoro have a slightly bigger ship with a single sail on it. Nami, steals one of the ships from Buggy's crew. So they have ships that suit their needs, that'll do in a pinch, that'll get them from island to island. Keep in mind, this was only the East Blue, so it wasn't like they had to worry about super dangerous weather patterns. If that was the case, they would have just died, when they're in these tiny little boats, then all of a sudden a fucking typhoon just whips up out of nowhere. Finally, they arrive on the Gecko Islands on Syrup Village, specifically, where they meet Usopp and Kaya, as well as with her evil butler, Klahadore, and her not-so-evil butler, yet kind of a furry, but not really, Merry. Merry was the guy that actually designed and built the Going Merry, and I feel like he just gets shit for credit, you know what I mean? We've seen him in Strong World, he was there ever since a little kid designing how he was gonna, set up the Going Merry. He built it as a caravel model ship, and it was supposed to be a ship intended for the upper class. It was not a ship that was intended to take on the Grand Line. It was probably not even intended to have a really prolonged voyage. Honestly, given that Merry really cared for Kaya, I could see that, when he was a kid, he was designing it like that was his dream, and then after he was employed by Kaya's parents, and maybe he thought, I'm gonna finish the Going Merry, and then after Kaya gets better, after she stops being sick, we're gonna, head out and I could show her the world with the ship that I built, because Merry was a pretty cool guy like that. But he ends up building the ship. He has it all ready to go. I guess just because Kaya's ill, there was really no reason for him to use it for really much of anything. So I guess Merry would be a very accomplished shipwright if he built the damn thing. I don't think it was ever mentioned that anybody else built it. He had the blueprints for it. Merry's a shipwright. He built the damn thing. But nobody ever mentions Merry. Usually when they're talking about the origins of the Going Merry, Usopp refers to it as, that's Kaya's ship. I'm like, well, I mean, I guess it's in, she owns it. I guess Merry gave it to her, but the whole reason it was named the Going Merry, as well as the the figurehead on it that has become so iconic throughout One Piece, was because of Merry. So I just, come on guys, give Merry some more credit. But anyway, no, he was pretty chill. So after Luffy defeats Klahadore, after his evil plans have been brought to fruition, after it's revealed that Usopp's a pretty stand-up guy as well, as gratitude for them, the only thing that they really can give them was the Going Merry fully stocked with all the food and provisions they would need for their their journey. Like I said, though, not intended for a prolonged journey, and certainly not intended for the waters of the Grand Line. Later on, by the time we get to Water 7, the shipwrights are just flabbergasted they've managed to make it that far into the Grand Line with a ship of Mary's class. And that just shows a testament to Nami's navigational skills. And Usopp is, Usopp was referred to as like the shipwrights, like, you're not very good at doing this, you're not very good at fixing the ship, but we're gonna get into that later. All of the damage that Mary suffered, mostly at the hands of Luffy, the Usopp did a pretty damn decent job, I must say. So they use the ship, they leave Syrup Village, and they use it on their journey throughout the East Blue. It doesn't incur a lot of damage throughout that. Nami steals it when they get to the Baratier to go back to Arlong Park, but they're eventually reunited with it. They go to Log Town with it, and then they're finally ready to make their journey to the Grand Line. And this is where we start to see some wear and tear on the ship. First things first, they gotta climb up Reverse Mountain, pretty treacherous. And then, of course, when you get to the other side of Reverse Mountain, you gotta worry about the giant whale that's the size of a mountain, and they basically, they're about to crash into it. Luffy was smart enough to use the cannon there to offset their momentum and kind of like, slow the ship down. One of the more clever moments that Luffy has shown in these kind of tight situations, that doesn't involve fighting. I'm not calling Luffy stupid, but, well, from what we're gonna see in a second here. Anyway, the ship's figurehead breaks off because it bumps into Laboon, and the head of the lamb head gets knocked off and goes spiraling onto the deck, and Luffy's mighty pissed about that because that's his favorite seat, to sit on the figurehead. Usopp manages to, repair the figurehead. That's not a big deal. What is a big deal is the mast. See, I'm not a fucking shipwright. I don't know much about ships or building ships, but I'm gonna go off on a limb here and say that a ship of Mary's class, a sailing ship that requires, a sail to get going, I'm gonna assume the mast is a very important part of the ship. Am I incorrect in saying that? Okay, so Luffy rips off the fucking thing and then uses it to stab the whale. Why did he do this? Because he wanted to make the whale feel better. Might seem kind of contradictory. You want to make the whale feel better, why would you stab it in an open wound with the ship's mast? Well, because Laboon was used to fighting and sparring and having fun with his previous crewmates, and Luffy saw that, and Luffy wanted to give him a good time, so the only thing Luffy could think of is ripping out the mast of their ship and using it to stab it in the wound. Okay, look, Luffy, you want to have an adventure, right? That's your overarching thing. You want to have a great adventure. You want to find the One Piece. You want to be king of the pirates. Try not seriously crippling your ship in the process. That would be lovely if you could avoid that. And this is what I say about Usopp. Usopp, despite saying I don't really have a lot of shipwright knowledge, he managed to hoist the fucking mast back up and then secure it, back to the ship tightly enough that it could still be used as a mast. And keep in mind, this was still at the very beginning of their journey. This is right after they get into the Grand Line, this shit happens. And they still managed to go from, Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, Drum Island, Alabasta, Skypiea, Jaya. Although, once they do go from Jaya to Skypiea, the ship is repaired a little bit and reinforced by the Sariyama Alliance, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. Just saying that a lot of the damage incurred by the ship, kinda Luffy's fault. After you get the Thousand Sunny, I can imagine Franky's just not having any of that shit. Like, Luffy ever thinks about ripping off the mast to do something, Franky's like, oh, the fuck you are, Okay, so that's good there. It's also interesting to note that there isn't really any major repairs to the Straw Hats ship, the Going Merry, up until the Sariyama Alliance does it so they can actually travel to the sky. And that makes me think, how do normal ships repair themselves? Like, how do you repair a ship, in our world? Let's go back a few hundred years to the days when it was, wooden ships sailing the ocean. How would that work? Well, yeah, you would have shipwrights on board. You would actually have, like, I think a lot of the crew would have to know basic repair, knowledge about the ship if you're going to be sailing on it. It wouldn't be a situation where it's just like there's just one shipwright on the entire ship. I would assume that the entire crew would have at least a little bit of knowledge in what to do if the freaking ship springs a leak. But the other thing you have to imagine is when they arrive at ports in islands, repair work is done. You know, it makes sense. You know, your ship's going to have a lot of wear and tear from getting to point A to point B. You get to the next island, you get to the port, and the port has a series of shipwrights that can repair your ship for you. And so you might question, well, why doesn't this happen in the One Piece universe? It actually makes sense because we're talking about a pirate ship. We're not talking about a normal civilian ship. We're not talking about a Navy ship. We're talking about pirate ships. And I can imagine that the world government has come out and said, and it's even been stated in the story once we get to Water 7 with Tom, it's stated, you know, helping and aiding pirates, that's not allowed. That's a big no-no. So there's a lot of times when the Straw Hats are allowed to moor their ship at an actual port, like when they get to Logtown, or even when they get to like Alabasta, when they get to Nanohana, they can just moor their ship in the port of Nanohana. And then there's other times when they have to make sure to park it like kind of far away, like in Dressrosa. But I can imagine they can't like go up to the mechanics, you know, or the shipwrights at the port and be like, can you fix our ship for us? By the way, just ignore that fucking skull and crossbones on it, because I think the mechanics would be like, we don't want to get arrested, so that's probably why that the Sunny has, I mean, the Mary has incurred so much damage, and even after getting to island, even islands that have big port cities, they're not going to be repaired, because no one really wants to touch a pirate ship, you know? So yeah, that was the case there. You know, it goes from Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, Drum Island, doesn't really, I mean, incurs like wear and tear along the way, as you would assume. Mary is a ship that is very tiny. I would say cozy would be a term. You know, all of the rooms are relatively small. There's a room for the men, there's a room for the women. Actually, after arriving at Kokoyashi Village, Genzo, the sheriff of the village, he actually adds a bar into the woman's room. So, you know, okay, so the Going Merry with open bar. There's also like a shared like common area where the dining room is and the kitchen, and also where you steer the ship. The Going Merry has like a weird steering mechanism. It doesn't actually have like a typical like ship, like, you know, a bow face turn to the stern, you know, shiver my britches, you swabs. I don't know pirate talk, but you know, this isn't the fucking 4Kids dub. But it doesn't have a typical steering wheel like this, like the Sunny does. It has like a joystick, if we're just gonna be straight with you. It's just a pole coming out of the deck that has a figurehead like the lamb on the actual ship, and you just maneuver it like a fucking joystick, and that's how you turn the ship. So interesting, if nothing else, like I said. There's also rooms to store, you know, food and everything like that. But yeah, it's a relatively small ship, but it's cozy. It's suited the Straw Hats' needs. The Straw Hats have never been a very big pirate crew, so for only like the up to the 7 members of the crew that actually journeyed with the Going Merry in its entirety. I know Franky sailed on it a little bit, but that doesn't really count. They only went from Eni's lobby to when the ship eventually broke, so that was like all that Franky did on the ship itself. You know, he used his coup de vent to escape Eni's lobby, and that was pretty much it. And then Brook didn't sail on it at all. But yeah, I mean, it suited the 7 crew members' needs. When you get to Jaya, they needed to get into the sky, so the Sariyama Alliance did some rudimentary repair work on it, probably bolstered all of Usopp's repairs, like patched all the holes and everything like that, probably reinforced the mast and everything, and then equipped the flight gear to it, the gear that allowed it to actually, fly through the sky without breaking into 1,000 pieces, and also turned it into a chicken. And so this is when you start really noticing, though, the damage that the Mary has incurred. Like, Oda wasn't doing this just for the sake of comedy, like, oh, Luffy ripped off the mast, that's just funny, okay, Usopp repairs it, everything's good. No, I think Oda made it a point, like, relatively earlier on in the Grand Line that, yeah, there's going to come a point where the Straw Hats are going to have to get a new ship. And so he wanted to tear at our heartstrings a little bit more by making us so freaking dedicated and attached to this damn piece of wood. I'm sorry, Mary, you're not a piece of wood. You're alive to me. I believe. Do you believe? I believe. Anyway, while on Skypiea, it gets stuck on this altar, which also probably isn't doing much for its, the bottom of the ship, considering that it's now on stone, probably not a good thing there. And while the Straw Hats are on the coast and, just having a camp out waiting for, the next, day so they can go and hunt the gold and everything like that, Usopp gets up to take a leak, and he looks off to the altar where there should be nobody. It's like, it's a fucking altar out in the middle of a lake, and the lake is filled with, like, sky sharks and shit, so nobody should be out there. And he looks over and he sees a ghostly figure, a visage, pounding at the ship, repairing it almost, and stating that, don't worry, I'll carry everybody a little while longer. Usopp, you know, shits himself, as you would see a freaking ghost out of nowhere. The rest of the crew, he tells the rest of the crew they don't believe him. Is like, Usopp, you and your crazy tall tales. But sure enough, the next day when they go and they see the Going Merry, it's been repaired a little bit. Not very well. It's still, you know, just you know, ad hoc repairs and everything like that. Am I using the word ad hoc correctly? I think that's the first time I've ever used that word. But anyway, like basic repairs, and the flight gear has been removed. So it's weird. It's like, okay, the only person that should know, like, we're in the fucking sky right now. The only person that should be aware of what the Merry is supposed to look like should be the Straw Hat Pirate crew, and they were all asleep. So who did these repairs? But they had to worry about other stuff, you know, Eneru, fucking lightning, divine judgment, and all that shit, plus a city of gold and a giant snake trying to eat them. So there was a lot on their plate right now. This was the last thing they had to be concerned about. They managed to eventually get the Merry off the altar, and then they left the sky with her, you know, the giant octopus balloon thing there. One of the funnier moments, because you see the Merry and its eyes, you know, falling as they, you know, descend the sky. That was a pretty funny moment there. This was something that I actually liked they did in the anime. There was a filler arc, the G8 arc, when the Straw Hats land back in the ocean. In the manga, they just land in like a random spot. In the anime, they land in the middle of a marine base, Navarone, and the Going Merry gets captured by the marine base, and, you know, the mechanic there, Mako, he's looking over it, or was it Mako, whichever. He's looking at the ship, and he's the shipwright for the Marines, and he's looking at it, and I'm like, oh, and he eventually meets Usopp, and he's like, so, are you the shipwright? And he's like, oh, actually, I'm a sniper. And he's like, okay, yeah, because this doesn't look good. And it's funny, because Usopp brings up what he saw in the sky. I saw this ghostly figure repairing it. And Mako is just like, maybe that must have been, and then he gets cut off. And it was just a filler, so they couldn't reveal it now. But it was cool. It was like something else that really elaborated upon more that, yeah, the Merry's time is drawing near. Finally, when we get to Water 7, it's revealed that the keel is damaged, so it's irreparable. It's basically the core of the ship. The thing that it's actually based around is the keel, and once that's gone, you're fucked. The only thing they could do is build a very similar ship, but they say that even if we built a ship using the same blueprints, it would be with different wood, and the differences would be ever so slight, and you would notice that it's not the same ship. You would know in your heart of hearts it's not the real Going Merry. So we could build you the same ship, but I don't think you would really want to. And then this is fucking just a depressing-ass arc for the Merry. It's horrible. You get the fight between Usopp and Luffy when Usopp wants to keep the ship, and Luffy's trying, hey, we want to... These are the best shipwrights in the world, and they're telling us that it's not going to make it to the next island, and I'm the captain. I have to make sure that this crew is... I do what's best for the crew, and this is a moment where Luffy realizes it's not all fucking fun and games. You're not all going to be able to just be like, alright, let's go to that island and get that treasure, let's go over there and fight that monster. You know, it's... Sometimes you gotta make really hard decisions here, like, he doesn't want to give up the Going Merry. Nobody does, but... He's got to be a captain. He's got to put his foot down here. And so Usopp and Luffy duke it out, and the fucking waves crash against the Merry's figurehead, and you see it crying, and it's like, oh, man. And then eventually it gets washed ashore on Junk Island, and icebergs around it, and the Merry's, like, speaking out, because the Merry at this point has, like, its own, like, awareness of itself. The way that Franky states is that it's a Klabautermann. That's the thing that Usopp saw. It's like a kind of like a fairy that's specifically suited to like seafaring vessels. Like, it's a specific kind of fairy that only appears when the ship is very loved by its crewmates, but also when that ship is basically doomed, when that ship is going to eventually reach its end. It's like the spirit of the ship coming into reality. All the love that the ship received over the years, you know, comes into existence. Actually, not even years. The Straw Hats didn't even have the Merry for, like, probably less than like 6 or 8 months, really. You know, it's just, I mean, that makes sense considering all the wear and tear. They wouldn't be able to have it for years, but considering the time frame, that's what we're working with here. So that's what the figure was. That's what the spirit of the Merry was, the Klabautermann. But yeah, it's washed ashore on Scrap Island, and it just wants to sail one last time to save its crew. And so Iceberg is around, and it's speaking to Iceberg, and Iceberg's like, why am I doing this? Why am I repairing this thing? There's no point of it. This ship is doomed. But he keeps doing it because he feels like it's the right thing to do, and eventually he repairs it to the point where it, you know, goes out to sea and just drifts away, and it just says, thank you. And I'm like, oh, God, Merry, why? Finally, this is the the kicker, man. This is like the highest moment and the lowest moment. Straw Hats are cornered on Enies Lobby, right? Fucking Navy battleships, Buster Call, dead to rights. There's no fucking way out of here. And then Mary shows up, and it's like, oh, there's a fucking way out of here. Straw Hats all jump on the Mary. Let's get out of Dodge. Franky coup de vent blasts out of the fucking gates of justice. We did it. We did it. Crack, snap, pop. No. God, no, why? And that is the end for the Mary. Luckily, the Galley Law Company arrives at the same time, so the Straw Hats have another ship to get on so they don't all die at sea. But there's no point in trying to repair it. There's no point in even really bringing it back to Water 7. It's pretty much done. So because the bottom of the sea is a lonely place, they decided to set the Mary off with a Viking funeral. So they all are in like a long boat, and then Luffy goes out with a torch and then sets it on fire. And then like half the episode is just watching the thing burn as snow falls from the sky, and fucking Dear Friend by Triplane starts queuing up like Ana e da ani da uru da det. I can't speak Japanese. Yada ken sorta kinda no. I like to drink iced tea. Okay, I'm sorry. I just ruined that entire song for the entire One Piece fan base, but I do enjoy iced tea. I was telling the truth about that. But it does give off, the Klabautermann does give off a farewell message to the Straw Hat crew, and it's kind of hard, admittedly. It's kind of hard to watch that episode even today, even after watching it so many times, and not get a tear in your eye, at least a little bit for this ship. This is the most I've ever felt emotional for a mode of transportation's destruction. Right next to Harry Potter's Nimbus 2000 and the RV from Breaking Bad. But Mary is number one, okay? Well, alright. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Hey, they're in Water 7, they're in the mecha capital of the world of a shipbuilding yard, they got Franky now on their side, and he offers them to build them a ship, to which he does. He takes the money that he stole from the Straw Hats to buy atom wood, which is the strongest kind of wood on the planet, and he uses it to create a brigantine-style ship, which is named the Thousand Sunny. It goes through a few names before that, you know, and like Wolfgang Lord Sunflower was like one of them, because they couldn't decide if it was a lion or a sunflower, but it is a lion. It's supposed to be like, well, the king of the pirates and the king of the jungle that is sailing on the ocean. Makes sense to me, right? Now, the Thousand Sunny, though, is a fucking kick-ass ship. Alright, what the Mary has sentimental value. The Mary will always be there first, just from nostalgic point of view. But the Mary didn't really have much in terms of, like, you know, cool features to offer. You know, the coolest feature that the Mary had was, like, the joystick control thing I told you about, and the fact that its figurehead was, like I said, one of the more iconic symbols in the entire story. The Thousand Sunny is decked out. It is fully loaded and fully ready. Franky took a lot of really interesting ideas into the design. So the figurehead of the ship has a giant-ass cannon on the inside, not just a normal cannon that shoots cannonballs. It shoots compressed air called the Gao cannon, as well as a thruster on the back. That's the only thing I can call that thing, is a fucking thruster, which can emit a burst of air that can send them flying over a kilometer away, called the coup de burst. Now, the thing that supplies the fuel to this is cola, the same thing that supplies Franky with his supply. So I guess cola is like the most multifaceted thing in One Piece. It's a beverage and also like a fucking fuel source that rivals like fossil fuels in our world. So get on that shit, Coca-Cola Corporation. You can solve this energy crisis. On top of that, the deck is like a yard. Like it has its own artificial grass, and it's got a tree and a swing. It's got an aquarium where you can catch fish and throw it in there. It's got a bar, an entire library. The mast of the ship, like the very top of it, is also like a lookout post. It's also a gym where, you know, Zoro, you know, lifts his weights. You got a bathroom that looks pretty sweet. Only one toilet though, which is kind of But the star attraction of the Thousand Sunny, going beyond just the mouth cannon and the rear thrusters, it's got some other features like the eyes of the lion figurehead are like spotlights and shit. But one of the star attractions is the soldier docking system, the system that Franky came up with. The lower portions of the ship can rotate in and out, and you know they can open up these revolving doors on either side of the ship, revealing like soldiers, as Franky calls them. Basically, these little mini ships or modes of transportation that the Sunny is like the boss of. It's like a carrier Zord from like Power Rangers, if you've ever watched this, you know. So you have docking channel number 0, which before the time skip, those were like the paddles. So you'd have like the docking channel go on both ends, and you'd have these giant paddles come out that allowed it to turn into paddle ship Sunny, allowing it to move when there's no wind currents. So pretty cool. After the time skip, these are actually removed, and a new engine is fitted underneath the Sunny. So it really, like, the paddle ship thing is cool, but it just seems like it takes up a lot of space, you know. And Franky, after being on Vegapunk's, you know, Island, Baltimore, I guess he figured out, like, oh, this is an easier way to create like an engine propulsion system without taking up these giant paddles. So there's a new engine underneath the Sunny that allows it to move, and Zero's channels were replaced with channels 5 and 6. So now there's like an extra, there's now 6 channels for the Thousand Sunny to take advantage of. So docking channel 1 is the Shiru Mokuba White Horse. It's basically the waiver that Nami got from Skypiea with the jet dial, like the really fast one, except Franky modified it to look like a horse and added a tire, so now it can be ridden on dry land as well as in the ocean. Nami was pretty pissed by when, you know, he first revealed it, but it is pretty neat now that you can have it on the land as well as on the water. Channel 2 is actually pretty cool. It's a callback to the Going Merry. Franky didn't know the Going Merry very well, but he knew that it was very attached to the ship, like when Usopp was kept trying to repair it while Franky was holding him hostage, and he's witnessing like the dedication that Usopp had to it no matter what. Franky was like moved to tears. So for that reason, he made the Mini Mary 2. Basically a tiny little steamboat that can be used to carry like 5 or 6 people, and his original design was for it to be like used for shopping, so you could use it to go and pick up food and then come back to the main ship. The Straw Hats used this when they arrived at Punk Hazard to get on the actual island, so it's come in handy a few times. There doesn't seem to be much to it. Doesn't seem to be a lot of like weapons or anything attached to it. Just a simple paddle ship, not a paddle ship, a steam ship, runs on steam, that just has the same figurehead as the Mary, but the Straw Hats were very happy nonetheless that Franky built this in for it. The third one is, I think, one of the coolest, and it's the Shark Submerge 3. So as the name implies, it's a submarine that's designed to look like a shark. The max depth that it can go down, I think, is about 6,000 or 7,000 meters, something like that, so you can't go down too far before the pressure starts to crush it. But it's pretty cool. I mean, it's just neat to think that the Straw Hats have a fucking submarine at their disposal. It's pretty neat, you know what I mean? The thing that always made me kind of, like, cringe a little bit, and yeah, there's even things in the world that make me cringe, is that the people that usually go into the Shark Submerge are Devil Fruit users, like Luffy's gone down, Robin, Brook, Chopper, and I'm just like, what happens if that thing breaks underwater? They're fucked. They're dead. They're gone. You know, this is, okay, you're just gonna send the 3 Devil Fruit users down in the Shark Submerge, 7,000 meters under. Okay, fine, you have fun with that. Holy shit, that would be nerve-wracking. If I have a Devil Fruit power, I wouldn't step near that thing, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, get me away from that tin death trap. Franky's like, what are you calling a death trap? I'm like, oh, no, it's not you, it's just, you know, I gotta be careful. I gotta look out for my own needs. Alright, so then after the time skip, Franky, I said, modifies channels. Channel 4 did exist before the time skip, but it was empty. He didn't have any plans for anything yet. It was just filled with like an inflatable pool that the Straw Hats could use. But Channel 4 after the time skip is the FRU-4, or the giant-ass motorcycle that Franky invented. So we don't really get to see it all that often, really. We don't really get to see him use the motorcycle. We see him use it once when he breaks it out during Fishman Island, but he immediately uses it to combine with the Brachio tank, and we don't really get to see him use it much after that. So Channel 5 is the Brachio tank. I just want to pause for a second to, repeat that the Straw Hats have a fucking tank at their disposal to be called on whenever. So, hey, Big Mom's chasing them right now. Break out the Brachio tank. Like, fire! She's still coming! Fire again, Chopper! Chopper's the one that usually pilots it, and it's hilarious, because it's just this little chibi reindeer firing this giant fucking cannon. It's great. So like I said, Channel 4, the motorcycle, the FRU-4, and the Brachio Tank 5 can combine together to create Iron Pirate Franky Shogun. So the Straw Hats now have a Megazord at their disposal, although it's very clear that only, like, Franky really knows how to pilot the thing, so even though the Straw Hats can call upon it technically whenever, Franky is the one that only can really use it. So, I mean, that would be cool to see that. Maybe like Luffy or Chopper or Brook hop into the Franky Shogun and go crazy. But I don't think they can do that at this point. I think Franky needs to give them some lessons with that in case they ever need to use it, though. Like, you know, just like, okay, well, here's how you initiate the combiner sequence, and remember, you have to say 15 supers in order to get it going. That's how it moves. It's like Gurren Lagann, you know, it's like the power of manliness powers this machine. But yeah, so the Straw Hats have a tank, a motorcycle, a submarine, and a Megazord. What else? Well, we don't really know what else because, you know, like I said, there'd be 6 channels. So there was originally 0, 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, but now the 2 0 channels have been removed. So now you have, you know, 1, Shiro Mokuba, 2, Mini Mary, 3, Sharks Emerge, 4 is the motorcycle, 5 is the Brachio tank. What's in channel 6? I think it might just be empty. It might just replace what the inflatable pool was before. It might just be an empty channel. But even if it is empty, that still gives something else to, you know, what Franky could add to it. So, but I have a theory on what is actually in dock number 6. So, Franky was on Baltimore for the 2-year time skip, right? And he eventually had to get a way to go from Baltimore back to Sabaody. Now, we saw how a lot of the Straw Hats arrived at the Sabaody archipelago. In fact, we saw how every single one of them arrived. Luffy arrived because of Boa Hancock. Zoro arrived because of Perona's guidance. Sanji arrived because of the Kamabaka Kingdom, you know, the Okama. They took Sanji there. Chopper arrived via the giant bird from the Torino Kingdom. Robin arrived because of the not the world government. Oh, that would be awkward. You know, the world government takes Robin. Like, oh, by the way, I'm not really Nico Robin. No, the Revolutionary Army. They take her to Sabaody, and then she leaves, and they're looking for her. And then Brook arrives because of his tour. His grand tour as the Soul King. So how did Franky arrive there? He's the only one that we don't see. Oh, and then Usopp arrived because of the giant bugs from the Boeing Islands, and Heracles came with him. So that was cool. But how did Franky arrive on the archipelago? We don't get to see that. So I want to think that Franky just built like some bullshit ship that he could just, because he's a shipwright, he could just whip up a fucking ship anytime. In this case, it would have been like an icebreaker ship to get off of Baltimore. And so that's what he used to get to Sabaody. Now, you might think, like, where does the motorcycle and the tank come into all this? You know, couldn't he have used them? And I'm thinking, well, we haven't really seen, like, that would make sense. And it's like, where did they come from? Because Franky arrived on the archipelago 10 days before everybody else did. Like, he got there second. He got there, so he was working on the Sunny, giving, like, repairs and renovations. Could Franky have built the motorcycle and the tank and the Shogun in only 10 days? I mean, Franky's pretty good, but is he that good? But if he did, you know, create them on Baltimore, I guess that would mean that the Franky Shogun is capable of, you know, sailing the ocean. But we just haven't seen that feature in it yet. We haven't seen the feature of it, you know, actually traversing the ocean. So I like to think that Franky is just such a good shipwright. Like, he already had the plans. He had everything ready to go for the motorcycle and the tank and how they were going to combine and everything. And he built an icebreaker ship to get from Baltimore to Sabaody. And then he, you know, used the, you know, Dock 6 to keep the icebreaker ship in it. And then he built the motorcycle and the Brachio tank in those 10 days. Franky, I mean, he's a really good shipwright. He could do it. I mean, the Thousand Sunny itself did not take very long for him to build. It only took like a few weeks for him to build an entire ship, though to be fair, he had Iceberg and everybody else helping him out with it. But I don't know, because if that's not the case and Franky built the motorcycle and the Brachio tank on Baltimore, that means they're capable of sailing the ocean, which we just haven't seen. So that's the case there. But that's everything about the Thousand Sunny. There's a few other features, like it has, the chicken Voyage. The mane of the lion can spin, and that can, you know, go in reverse in case they need to get out of a tight situation. But I think there's still a few mysteries of the Sunny that we've yet to see that Franky has yet to reveal since the time skip, and Franky hasn't been around in the recent arc, obviously. So I hope to see what else we could do with that. I hope to see more of the motorcycle and the Brachio tank, like, separate. I mean, the Shogun is cool and everything. I'm not knocking the fucking Megazord. I'm just saying that it'd be cool to see them separate. And if there's nothing in Dock 6, you know, what maybe Franky could add to Dock 6, or some such like that. So anyway, what do you guys think about that? What do you think about the Thousand Sunny and the Mary? Oh, and the last thing before I go, and this was actually shown in the episode of Mary. I almost forgot about this. And this was adorable. I love that they added this. You get to see the Klabautermann on the Thousand Sunny. So the Thousand Sunny is I would like to say that's the same Klabautermann from the Mary, or at least it's like it continued its existence there. The only thing is, I think Franky mentioned that whenever a Klabautermann is seen on the ship, it like spells that that ship doesn't have long left. But keep in mind, the episode of Mary, that was an anime-only thing. It wasn't going to tie in with the story. It was just to kind of make you feel good, you know, and about what's going on. Like, oh, the Mary had this spirit that, you know, because the Straw Hats loved it so much, and now the same spirit is on the Sunny because the Straw Hats love the Sunny. So there you go. We don't get to see the Sunny, you know, as a motive as the Mary was near the end, but maybe someday. And then there's still some theories that the Straw Hats are going to need a third ship, like there's going to be a third one. I don't see any need for that. I don't see that. If there needs to be a big change to the ship, you know, Franky can just do it. Franky can, you know, oh, we are going into dangerous territory. I need to take a week or two to add some special. I need to add blast shields to the fucking Sunny because we're going into an area where it's just constantly bombarding with giant, you know, hail the size of mountains. I gotta build like special. I gotta build like proton torpedoes and shit on the Sunny. Franky could do it. Franky could come up with whatever you need the Sunny to accomplish. Franky even said, you know, anything that you want this ship can do, it can do, Captain. This is the ship that's gonna conquer the world. So, yeah, pretty damn sweet. Thanks you guys for watching. This was a longer video than I thought. I was only gonna make a quick video about the ships, but I ended up just talking about all this shit. So yeah, they're pretty cool ships. Thanks for watching. Comment below, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks guys for watching. Tekking, signing out.